Hello, my name is Alex Boyles, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to play Wu Wei, Journey of the Changing Path, designed by Justin Waggle and published by Grey Wolf Games. Wu Wei has a few different game modes, including a solo mode, an asymmetrical mode of play called Emperor Level, and two levels of standard play, known as Initiate Level and Master Level. In this video, I'll be teaching you the Initiate Level mode, which is the most basic form of the game. If this is your first time playing Wu Wei, it is recommended that you play this mode, as it teaches you the basics of the game before introducing more advanced mechanics. And now to the setup. First, place the game board in the center of the play area. Then, find the directional tiles and place them in their indicated spots on the board. Then, find the two yin-yang tiles and place them in their indicated spaces. Now note that the yin-yang tiles are double-sided, so be sure that you are placing the correct side face up. Now locate the 5 temples, which have colored squares on them, and the 5 palaces, which have colored triangles. Randomly distribute these among the remaining empty spaces for them, but note that no two palaces or temples can be adjacent to the same terrain octagon, so make sure they're not. Note, however, that a palace and a temple can be adjacent to the same terrain octagon. Next, find the town pieces, which have colored circles on them. Place a town of its matching color in each of the 4 indicated corner squares. Then, take the remaining 16 towns and place them randomly on the board. Next, stack the 3 center octagons in this center space, with the appropriate tile on top to represent the game mode you're playing, one for Emperor, one for Master, and one for Initiate, which of course I'm setting up for here. Next, you'll place the field octagons, starting with finding 4 to match the pictures printed on the board, and then randomly assigning the rest to the rest of the colored octagons. Note that the colors of the octagons indicate which quadrant they are in, either north, east, south, or west, noting that some spaces share 2 colors, meaning that the tile placed here is in both quadrants. Next, we move on to setting up the characters and supply. First, determine a starting player and give them the starting player marker with the sun side facing up. Then have each player choose a lineage marker in the color of their choice, or just pass them out randomly. I'll be setting up a 3-player game, so we'll be using these ones. Find the student tokens, which have a white plus sign on one end and a white minus sign on the other, that match the colors of the lineage markers in play. Place them on the center octagon, minus side up. Return any unused students and lineage markers to the box. Now find the master tokens, which have a black plus sign on one end and a black minus sign on the other. Place each master, regardless of how many players you have, plus side up on their corresponding temple. Now let's find the 3 tracker boards, one for towns, one for palaces, and one for temples. Now normally it says to place these boards around 3 edges of the board, but to save space, I'm going to place 2 over here and 1 over here. At this point, the player going last in the turn order decides where to place these 3 status trackers, one for each board. Now, I'll place them for now, and we'll go into how these work when we get into gameplay, but the one thing you need to know during the setup is that on this town board, the indicator tells us which chi element is active. During gameplay, this is the only chi element you can use during your turn, and we'll see how this changes a little later. Next, find the gathering marker and place it sun side up on the temple tracker board. Next, find the chi tokens, which are located in these lovely bags. Give each player one of each color, and then give the second player in turn order 1 additional chi of the active element, the third player 2 additional chi, and so on. Place the remaining chi tokens off to the side, and I prefer to place them near the town board since the town board tracks the active element. Next, find the animal cards and separate them by animal type, placing them on the 4th side of the board. In this case, I'll just place them over here. Note that these cards do have a front and back, which you can tell because on the back, the symbol under the animal is just in gold. And that's the side you want showing in the setup. Now, set aside a number of walls equal to 8 minus the number of players. So, in this case, 8 minus 3 walls will leave us with 5 that we'll set next to the board.
And that's it. We're ready to play. In Wu Wei Initiate level, you will be moving your student around, trying to visit the 5 masters to acquire one of each of the animal cards, which you get corresponds to the color of each master. Once you get all 5 cards, you need to get your student and master back to the center of the game board. First person to do it wins. On your turn, there are 4 steps you must take in order, starting with meditate. This is where you check if you are able to move, and this will make sense after you understand the rest of the turn, so we'll come back to this. Next is the move step.
On your turn, you can move 1, 2, or 3 spaces with no backtracking allowed, and you must move at least 1 space. You move by going in a straight line from one side of the tile you are on to an adjacent tile on the board. Now, this means that if you're on a square tile, you can move in any of 4 directions to an adjacent octagon tile. Or if you're on an octagon, you can move in any of 8 directions, meaning you could move to an adjacent square or to an adjacent octagon. However, there are some spaces that you cannot move on to. First, once you leave the center octagon, you cannot re-enter that space until you have all 5 animal cards. Second, you can never go through or land on the 4 directional square tiles. Third, you cannot go through any walls on the board. We'll see how these enter play a little later. Fourth, you cannot end your movement on a tile with the same type of piece as yours, meaning students cannot share tiles with other students and masters cannot share tiles with other masters. And finally, you cannot move onto a terrain tile that is the same terrain as indicated on the temple tracker board, in this case, the blue winter tiles. We'll see later how this changes during the game.
There are also some special actions you can perform during the movement step of your turn using the chi you have gained, and you can do as many as you like and even repeat the same special actions if you wish, as long as you have the chi to spend. All of these actions are lumped under the term manifesting chi.
First, you can choose to move rapidly, meaning for every chi you spend, you can move an extra space that turn. So if I was red and I already moved 3 spaces, I could spend 1 chi of the indicated type, as indicated on the town board, to move an extra 4th space if I wanted to get to this green palace, for example. Second, you can destroy a wall by spending 3 chi while you're adjacent to it. Note that this can happen in between your movement, meaning you could move 2 spaces, 1, 2, and then spend 3 chi to destroy the wall and keep moving 1 more space for 3.
The last special action is activating one of your animal powers by spending 3 chi. Let's go over what these animal cards can do now, as they all affect your movement.
First, the snake card. Now, this card lets you move onto an adjacent wall, not destroying it, but treating it as a space that you can move onto or through freely. Now, remember that you do have to spend 3 chi to use it. And you might be thinking, why not just destroy the wall? Well, you could leave the wall to block your opponent, or in this case, the wall is covering a blue winter tile, which I wouldn't be able to actually move on to. So moving onto the wall is a good move. Now note that the arrows on this card indicate that this is one of your move actions, but can be used before or after any movement you've already used that turn. Next is the crane card. Note that it also has these 2 arrows, meaning you can use this before or after any of your movement. And this card lets you immediately leap to one of the 2 yin-yang tiles. This does count as 1 space of your movement, and you can continue moving from there or stop on that tile if you wish. Now we have the other three movement cards: leopard, dragon, and tiger. Now these all work the same way, so I'll explain them all at the same time. On the bottom of each card, you will see either a colored town, palace, or temple. Now, this card will use your entire movement action to leap you to the location shown on your card. In the case of the dragon and tiger, there's only one choice, as there is only one palace and temple of each color on the board. However, for the leopard card, you will have four different choices of tiles to jump to. Now remember, this uses your entire move action, so you may not move before or after leaping using this card. After you use the power of an animal card, you do not discard it to the deck. Rather, you just flip the card face down in front of you. This is important because you will still have the card, as it will count towards the five you are trying to collect. However, you can no longer use that power for the rest of the game, so choose wisely when to use these powers.
All right, just to reiterate, on the move step, you can move anywhere from 1 to 3 spaces, not backtracking, and you can augment this by spending chi to add extra movement per chi spent, or spend 3 chi to destroy a wall or use one of your animal cards. Now remember, you can only spend chi of the active element indicated on the town tracker board. However, at any time during the game, you can spend 2 matching chi of a non-active element in a process called alchemy to transform them into 1 chi of the active element. And that's movement. Now, if you can move from octagon to octagon, why would you ever go through or stop on a square tile? Well, you'll see why in the next step of the turn called Align with Nature.
In the Align with Nature step, you will look and see what kind of space you've landed on. If you land on a terrain space, nothing happens, and you go to the final step. If you land on a town, palace, or temple, first you collect 1 chi of the corresponding color that you've landed on. In this case, I would collect 1 yellow chi. Then you interact with that space and its corresponding tracker board. In this case, I've landed on the yellow town space. So I look to the town tracker board and I adjust the tracker to match the color of the town I've landed on. In this case, it's gone from white to yellow. This changes the active element, which again is the only color of chi anyone can use until it's changed again. If you land on a palace, the tiles with the colored triangles, you then look at the palace tracker board. Whichever palace color has the indicator on it is considered inactive, meaning it lacks the resources necessary to build a wall. So, if you have landed on the palace color that already has the tracker on it, as I have here, nothing else happens. However, for the sake of this video, let's say the palace tracker had been on blue. Now, if the palace that you land on isn't inactive, that is to say, is active, then you take a wall tile and you place it on any terrain octagon that is currently unoccupied by any tokens in the region controlled by that palace. East for green, north for blue, west for white, and south for red. If you land on the golden palace, as I have here, you can place the wall in any quadrant. In this case, I'll place the wall here. Now, after you've placed the wall, you then move the tracker to match the palace that you were on, meaning that your palace has now run out of the resources to build walls until another palace builds a wall later in the game. Remember that some tiles are in both quadrants, meaning that 2 different palaces could build a wall on this space. If all the walls have already been placed when you would be placing a wall from your palace, you may, if you wish, destroy one wall for free and then place it according to the placement rules of your palace. If you land on a temple space, you progress the indicator on the temple tracker board 1 space forward, no matter what color temple you've landed on. If this puts the tracker in winter, you then flip over the gathering token and you flip over the first player marker to their moon side to remind you that when you get to the first player's next turn, you will perform what is called a gathering, which I'll explain in a bit.
The last step of a turn is called develop discipline. Here, you check to see if your student is sharing a space with a master. If so, you gain the card associated with that master, which is indicated by their color. Now, as we saw, all snake and crane cards are the same, but if you are picking up a dragon, tiger, or leopard card, you get to look at all the remaining cards and choose which one you want. Now, you might be wondering why develop discipline is a separate step. Surely we should just do this whenever you land on a temple, as that's where the masters are. Well, masters will not always be on their temple spaces.
Once you have acquired all 5 cards from all 5 masters, you flip your student marker so its plus side is now showing on top, indicating that you are now a student master. Note that this is the only time that 2 tokens of the same type can share a regular space. This has a few consequences. First, you now get control of your master token, since your new goal is now to get your student and master back to the center of the board. So, on your movement step, you can split your movement between your 2 tokens as you see fit, maybe moving your student 2 and your master 1, or possibly letting your master move all 3. And this also means that when aligning with nature, you may have to resolve 2 tiles instead of just 1. For example, if my student ended his movement here and my master ended his movement here, then I would resolve both a town and a palace, receiving 1 chi for each tile I landed on and moving the indicators on the respective boards, and in the case of a palace, building a wall. And lastly, you are now considered a master of your color. So, if another student ends their movement on the same space as your student master, they can train with you and earn the animal card of the same type as your color.
All right, now that we've learned about steps 2 through 4, let's go back to step 1, meditate. During the meditate step, you check to see if any of your characters can move. Not being able to move can be caused by a number of factors, either the presence of other characters around your space, walls, the 4 directional tiles, the center octagon tile, or not being able to move onto terrain tiles due to the season indicated on the temple tracker. If during this step none of your characters can move, one of your characters must suffer a penalty, which is referred to as being undisciplined. In the beginning of the game, this step will only involve checking your student, but once you get all 5 animal cards, you will then have access to 2 characters. You only suffer a penalty if none of your characters can move. So even if one is trapped, if the other can move, you suffer no penalty. If all of your active pieces are blocked, you choose one of them to receive a penalty.
If you choose your student to take the penalty, you immediately lose an animal card chosen by the current starting player, which may be yourself. If this causes your student to no longer have all 5 cards, be sure to flip them back to their minus side, as you are no longer a student master. Then move your student back to the center octagon and begin normal movement from there. If you have control of both your student and master tokens, you may choose your master to take the penalty. If you do, your master loses your lineage marker, which is now returned not to the matching temple, but to the matching palace. Then flip your master to its minus side, indicating this loss, marking this master as dishonored. Then move your master to the center octagon and begin normal movement from here. Now, if your master is dishonored, students can no longer train with them. Instead, they can train with the lineage marker, again located on the matching palace. Once your master ends their movement on the palace, they regain this marker and flip back to their plus side, indicating that they are no longer dishonored.
So, now you know the 4 steps of your turn. Meditate, check to see if you can move, and if not, suffer the penalty. Move, either just your student or later in the game, split between your student and master tokens. Align with nature, depending on what space or spaces you have landed on, and then develop discipline if your student shares a space with a master. Players will go through these 4 steps clockwise around the table until a gathering is triggered, which you'll recall is when the season gets to winter on the temple tracker, and we get back to the player holding the first player token. At that point, a gathering will take place. During a gathering, players will blindly bid chi, remembering that only the active chi can be used, but you can perform alchemy to turn two matching chi into one of the active color at any time to determine a new first player. Players will take the chi they bid into a closed fist, and once all players have chosen, they simultaneously reveal their bids. The player who offered the most chi chooses a player to receive the first player token, and yes, you can choose yourself. Whoever is chosen now gets the starting player token with the sun side facing up. Now all players must take the chi they bid, even if they didn't win, and distribute it amongst their opponents however they like, so be careful when choosing how much to bid. Then, flip the gathering token so the sun side is facing up, and begin a new round of play starting with the player who now holds the first player token.
I want to note here that the temple tracker can keep moving once a gathering has been triggered. For example, if I were to move on to this green temple and I'm not the first player and we haven't yet gotten to the first player's turn again, I would move this to spring and it would keep going until we get to the first player who again has turned this token to its moon side. Then we would perform the gathering no matter what season is showing on the temple tracker board.
Rounds will be played like this until one player has collected all 5 animal cards and moved their student and master tokens back to the center octagon, at which point the game immediately ends and that player is declared the winner. And now you know how to play the initiate level of Wu Wei Journey of the Changing Path.